And the unity that must have to start now.
Why would even the spiritual war?
And the unity that must have to start now.
Why would even the spiritual war?
And the unity that must have to start now.
Why would even the spiritual war?
And the unity that must have to start now.
Why would even the spiritual war?
I think I'm starting to feel like I really understand, and all the things that I see, I can fully comprehend. And so I step outside to meet a newborn friend with my new attitude and something positive to lend, like some good advice. Though it may not feel nice and it might take a while for it to really make you smile, cause most people that I see, they're too scared to be free, too scared to hear the truth, misguided as a youth.
Yo, how's it going? I got Tony Mancasud on the place, and we are going to talk about something that's been on the palette of my speeches and some videos in recent times, even over a year or two, possibly 3. Go back and see. But thanks for checking us out. And what I'm alluding to is trying to cultivate this hermetically sealed society, and that has different pathways. It has different, names for it, or under different banners or definitions. The true definition of anarchy, meaning no masters and no slaves. And then there's the abolitionists, right? And the voluntarists. And yeah, Tony is a really cool cat, and been in contacts for a couple years now, I feel, on Facebook. You got your YouTube channels in 1 year. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, yo, Wake of Truth. Fuck yeah. Tell us a little about that, and yeah, what's on your mind for this discussion, man?
Sure. Well, man, so it's something that I wanted to do for a while, start the channel. And I think after the Funnel 3 conference, I was really inspired by, all the speakers there, and just I was like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna do it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least start, at least get the ball rolling. So, I got a few videos now. And I don't know, I had a presentation, kind of what I wanted to be like a docu-series that I'm kind of working on and off, but that's kind of a more long-term thing, I guess.
And what's that about? Or is it you keeping it under wraps?
It's like part 1 is on the channel. It's called An Incomplete History of Satanism. And so
wow.
I'm trying to kind of, just go through all the different topics, because it's such a, broad spectrum of topics that kind of interweave. And I wanted to kind of go back as far as I could and kind of show the viewer, how all these things are connected, and kind of build a case, for that. But
Right on.
yeah.
So we meet for the first time, my friend. Well, at least speaking together, but yeah, just being in correspondence, with the like-mindedness of so many people that we have, mutual friends on social media, and that's great. I love it, and I love the fact that more folks are willing to just collaborate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the main crux of this conversation, involves a lot of collaboration to build a hermetically sealed society within the iMaga Nation type of thing. Can you imagine these things? I mean, really, like, how hard can it be? We've been so conditioned, like we grew up under like all these systems of false forms of authority, and these false overlays of what society is supposed to be, type of thing, even though it's built by humans, yet they're just we're running off on programs on top of programs
Mhm.
with traumas and generational traumas, and so many negative feedback loops that are just perpetuating what we have today, and that kind of stuff. So we're kind of born in a similar era. You're late 70s, I'm early 80s, right? So yeah, man, we've seen a lot.
Those were
So
good times.
yeah, so that these later generations that knew what it was like to live without computers,
Yeah,
internet, and all that stuff, right? For the most part.
it was definitely a different world.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And as far as what a different world could look like in the future, what did you have in mind as far as your ideas and what you wanted to share with this topic of how what does anarchy look like in practical real life ways, and things like that, right? What
Yeah.
if you were to like draw an image, you have a blank canvas, right? You trying to like draw an image, or write a description of a character, whatever, like what would that person look like, operate like, all
Uh,
that stuff.
Oh boy,
Well, that's a lot, right?
a
As you wish for you.
lot of people have these assumptions, that they I think what people picture is just us going back to a time without civilization and without technology, and I think that's a huge misunderstanding of what anarchy really means, because well, we have civilization and we have technology now as far as how civilized we really are, versus where we should be, that's a different story. But we have all these you know nice things that make us comfortable, and provide us entertainment or whatever, and then we have these systems where we manage things, manage transactions, are able to coordinate large projects, and science, I mean, those things don't wouldn't have to go away. I mean, they're I mean, this is something that's been talked about extensively, but you know I would even go so far as to say probably the majority of jobs that we have today, you know, those people would probably be able to find a place under a voluntarist system. And a voluntarist system, I mean, there's there's really no set way that would have to work. Um, so that's when the main thing is that we don't violate the non-aggression principle. And um let's see. So one concept that's been discussed a lot is the idea of protection agencies, which, okay, so you have to think, like, if we're living by the non-aggression principle, then what do you do when someone steals from you, or whatever, like, are you just allowed to do whatever, or are you you know or would that be considered violence? Well, I mean, for one thing, if you're taking back something that is yours, then that's not violence. That would be considered a form of self-defense, within reason, obviously. If someone steals like what, a candy bar, you can't just stab them or whatever. But I mean, and then okay, and then people, might think, okay, well, what about the people who don't want to just buy a bunch of guns or something and just defend themselves and then form a posse, like whenever they want to, whenever someone's wrong, then, well, okay, that's where kind of the protection agencies come into play. And this could be an option, and it could be something set up voluntarily by, people who want to provide that service, and these agencies would act, I mean, they would serve many purposes. If you can imagine, think of an insurance company, an investigator, anything useful that the police actually do that isn't just coercing people and stealing from them. Anything, for instance, maybe they actually do something useful and recover your stolen car. You know, that would be another function of the protection agencies. Okay. And then litigation. Yeah. Some people think, wait a minute, but I thought anarchy means no laws. Well, not necessarily. I mean, we could have written laws, but, if you understand the concept of common law, common law is basically, what, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, and don't enter into false contracts or create false contracts or violate a contract, so as long as you're not doing those things, then, you're not doing anything wrong, but if you violate those things, then that gives the other person the right to act on that, and the protection agencies would be available to those people who wanted to, hire their services and, to serve all those functions. And then, for instance, litigation, there could be courts. I mean, so it would not be as different as people imagine. Um, and no, were you going to say something? Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, I could, unless you were going to continue, but yeah, I mean, like, with any society, there has to be like a proper foundation and structure with, people with, proper skill sets and things that, and like, yeah, I mean, like, society's been so conditioned to where there's so many automatic, systematic things, double meaning with the system of, like, oh, the system, whatever. No, we're talking about just like systems that have been, put in place. What about just like firefighters,
Yeah. Yeah. People think that, well, under anarchy, I mean, obviously the whole roads topic is, you know, that's
Beaten to
always like the
death.
first thing that people, but the thing is, like, people think that, like, what, you don't think we would have use for all these things still? I mean, for instance, the grocery store, that's been brought up as a very prime example. Nobody's forcing these people to open a grocery store. You know, they open a grocery store because guess what? Everybody wants food. So there's a market, there's an instant market. And guess what? People would probably want, to have somebody available to put out fires if they ever need it. You know, I mean,
Yeah, that's the
it's,
thing. Like, what's the concept of government? They're a medium and to facilitate, municipal things and create laws to, limit certain activities or permit whatever the hell and yada yada. And some of those things can be aligned to, cosmic law, natural law, just, basic, human universal rights, or they could be, just like man's law, where they just make up the rules and have, their their jurisdictions about wherever, and the moral relativity that follows suit and all that jazz, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of where government starts to, I mean, government is basically, it's a centralized power, and it holds a monopoly on force, a monopoly on violence, and government proposes to have the right to dictate what is right and wrong. That is moral relativism, and it's obviously, for those who you know are familiar, it's one of the four tenets of Satanism. I was actually just talking to someone about this today.
Mm.
Oh, what was it? They something, but they were. Oh, okay. It was about Ukraine, and I had made a post about a year ago about Zelensky, sending, basically kidnapping people off the street, and forcing them to go to war and fight and die, and many of them were handicapped. I mean, had no business, and they were sent out there with very minimal training. And, dude was like, well, look, it's called the draft. And I was like, yeah, slavery, that's what it is. And he's like, well, you can call it whatever you want, but it's legal. And, if their country wants to have a draft, then they have every right to. And I'm like, well, that's what is called moral relativism. You know, what's right and what's wrong is wrong, regardless of what anybody says. That doesn't change what it is.
Yeah, like how do two rights make a wrong? Or, that's a bad way to phrase it, but like how do they have a right to infringe upon the rights of others? Like
Yeah.
that's a simple question that can be simply answered, right? So like,
Hmm. Yeah.
so I wanna get into like the master builder phase of building a hermetically sealed society. But before we get to that, like, yeah, we're going over the obstacles that you know eh, limit us from making that happen and all that stuff, right? We're
Right.
not able
Right.
to. I mean, in just like the financial burden, it's not just government. It's the
Hmm.
oligarchy. The Black Rocks, the fucking vanguards, and the occultocracy behind all that. With the religious and financial government, yeah, the unholy trinity, all that jazz. So there's a lot of stuff to consider, and for folks to break away from that is one thing, and that's great. And it sucks that sometimes they, it. Here's the thing, it's easy to fall into these traps. Having these conversations, it's so easy to overgeneralize, and or for people to interpret that what we say is generalistic, right? But
Yeah.
I think like the majority of people around the world, I feel like they really do just want to live in a way where they're not really messed with all that much, and they go about their business and try to
Yeah.
live a happy life and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Yet yeah, there's the financial burden, there's obviously a lot of trauma and stuff, and so there's all these factors that people are operating on a daily basis with under the duress of this civilization that we live in, right?
Yeah.
So just to break away from that, that's great. That's one thing. But then it's kind of like exiting out of the matrix. Yet we still gotta kind of go back up in there to kind of get other folks out, that kind of stuff. Like if we build a society, like yeah, we can say like if we build it, they will come. Yet, like yeah, it's
But can but can we build it when they're still trying to coerce us into living under their rules? Is that possible? Especially in this day and age, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to have a breakaway society. Especially if you don't have a lot of resources.
yeah, yeah, and and it sometimes I'm gonna play devil's advocate a little bit in this, because as you've heard as well, there's a good amount of scrutiny regarding folks trying to live off grid or whatever, and some of the pitfalls, if you will, or limitations, and yada yada. Yet folks have their free will choice. Part of the solution is being able to be self-reliant, self-sufficient in multifaceted ways. Of course, we can't depend. Sorry, we cannot just be fighting against the system, if you will, while depending on the faculties of it, right? So how many
Yeah.
people today right now are subscribed to alternative energy, utilities and all these things, and where are they sourcing their water from? What other municipal services can they live without? Their plumbing, all these things, right? And how's
Right.
that going to look? If we're going to be trying to just do a breakaway society, and we got to start from fucking scratch.
Yeah.
People got to lay down the pipe and build the fucking foundation, like literally, like from the bedrock up to buildings and all that stuff, right? So some people have like a fantasized idea of what that's about, and yet, like devil's advocate, like for folks, on the anarchist tip and trying to act like fuck the government, I don't need your rules and I'm my own master, whatever the fuck. Like some of these people, live like a fucking slob. The whole meme. You've seen that around with like like you can't even put your shopping cart back
Oh
where
yeah.
it's supposed to be. Like how can you cooperate? You want to be living an anarchist life and you can't even cooperate with regular people, that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So it's like people still have their heads up their ass. There's a lot of lip servicing
Mhm.
towards whatever the fuck. And
That's true.
honestly, I got respects for those who have actually put their not their money, but their eye or their soul where their fucking mouth is and what they've been talking about, and are actually just living, without the help of government as less as possible. Like there's
Yeah.
all these, factors to consider, like how many people are actually living 100% free from fucking, the government, slavery, duress, whatever the fuck dilemma, right?
Right.
So things to consider. What are your thoughts? That
Uh,
was a lot. Yeah. Sorry.
I no, I would guess probably not a lot because as you've seen, I'm sure. I mean, there seems like there's an increasing effort to make it much, much more difficult for us to, if we were to try to build the sort of infrastructure that you're talking about that would be required to make that shift. And, I think, as you said, a lot of people do like to pay lip service to those ideas. But, I think once you really start to grasp, the concepts like what is actually required for true human freedom, and what is preventing us from getting there, then it really does start with yourself. And I mean, maybe you will look at the outside world first and see, all the things wrong with it, but then inevitably, you do have to do the inner work, and you do have to realize, well, you know what? Like I'd like things to be this way, but maybe I'm not living in a way that's conducive to that either, and I mean, man, and that I'm still going through a lot of that myself. You have to be more conscious about your interactions with people, and you know uh, be much more accepting of like how other people want to live, basically. Even if it's not the way you would want it to, because in the end, like, everybody is different, and we have to find ways to respect those differences and allow them, as long as they're not infringing on the rights of others. So it's, and I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, I'll piggyback off that because yes, I have this little note thing that I wrote for all these things that I have in mind. I just write notes of things that come to mind. And it's like, hey,
Yeah,
that's
me
interesting.
too.
Deep. Yeah. But yeah, it's quite the conundrum in this collective conscious unconscious world that we live in, and how we're whirling around and all this up and down. And hey, what's really going down, like, with deep down inside people? And like you said, it really starts from the individual. And I like to say it starts from the heart, because that has a little cool jingle, and that is that generative oscillating life force energy of care, compassion, and all that stuff that really gets the ball rolling in a magnanimous way, if you will.
Mhm.
And it can really break down a lot of this shadow ego bullshits that a lot of people get hung up on, that I feel even amongst the people that are looking to towards this type of trajectory, right? We've seen a lot of discord on face crook or fake book, whatever the hell that's called, or wherever. How many comments have you seen that are just dastardly, of really cool YouTube videos, and you see some idiots slathering their bullshit over whatever the hell they're projecting, so for those that have done shadow work or whatever the hell, and not just virtue signaling it, we can kind of perceive things deeper within ourselves, and also projections from others as well, and catch our own stuff and hold ourselves accountable before we act inappropriate in whatever situation, if you will. And being able to hold other people accountable is very, very, very key with everything. And it takes a village, right? And who's gonna let the village idiot run amok and ruin that shit? Like, who in the right mind would want to have someone in a really good network or a company or business that's just undermining things and muddying the waters or whatever, and just making shit look bad? No one fucking wants that. So there has to be accountability.
Yeah,
People, there has to be ways to go about it as well. And yeah, any thoughts on that?
man, that's a really tough one, because I like yeah, you put me on the spot, man. No,
Also,
but
it sounded like you
no,
wanted to
but
say something. I had more to say, but go for it.
oh, oh yeah, go on, go on. Sorry.
Okay, because it's just we've all been here, right? Like there's ways and approaches we can, it's not about like being on a crusade to hold people accountable, uh, like we're the fucking thought police and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's just, if people are acting out of alignment, we can be like, hey, man, you okay? And that kind of stuff. Or like, uh, why did you have to, behave like that? Or why did you say that? Yada, yada. Like really basic general shit. But, as far as, I'm going to go down this list of things that, with, the shadow aspect of the ego, when it makes it hard for one to admit being wrong
Mm-hmm.
and to use that art of persuasion towards those that have that difficulty of admitting that their wrongness. There's ways to go about that. Be creative, folks, like but at the same time, for some other different strokes for different folks in different situations, especially of the severity of the wrongdoing, right?
Yeah.
Think about people killing, whatever the hell, the violation of other people's rights, depending on the degrees, laws of polarity. But yeah, it's when people haven't really done the shadow work and integrated that shadow ego, whatever the hell, it's hard for them to forgive, apologize, forget, I guess, whatever. To admit that the other person was right, to be humbled, to kind of, I like to say, bask in a little humiliation, if you will, because those are like all these things are like opportunities to learn from and grow. And I don't know about you, but in the past, even before I was really awake or activated and all that stuff, like I've been able to patch up kind of messed up interactions with people, and you end up like having a great time. There's like a better camaraderie after you're able to kind of flip the script on like just a misunderstanding of something or an argument and this and that. And when you kind of like come to terms or like come to realizations of like some clarity or admit some stuff or whatever, I don't know. You can like find some. There's like some fraternity in that sense. Fraternité, and it's like brotherhood, if you will. Amongst men, in that kind of sense. And that's just thinking about my situation that I had with a gentleman. It could be between any human being. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And oh man, see, I was thinking something as you're saying that, but okay, so it's almost like a balance because a lot of spiritual teachings, which I might consider maybe a little questionable, but say, destroy your ego and stuff. And you don't really want to destroy your ego. It's about kind of finding a balance. Now, you can still learn something through that practice to some extent, by learning to put others first. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if you walk it through to conclusion, you know you're basically you're gonna lay down and lay down and die, basically. Like, what, let everybody else you know take everything from you, take your last bite of food or whatever. I'm just kind of using metaphors here, but so you know you really do have to achieve that balance, almost like that balance between the divine masculine and divine feminine, like finding that sense of care, and then finding that sense of strength, sense of assertiveness. And yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of why specifically said like the shadow aspect of the ego. And I love Terence McKenna, but I haven't been feeling that meme of that one quote of him like, your ego ain't your amigo, capisco, whatever
Yeah.
the hell. It's like, come on, man, really? It's like one too many shroom trips, possibly. Who knows? But anyways, I love the guy. Nothing against him, but it's like we can't agree with every single thing, and not every single thing that some truth speaker says is accurate 100% or whatever, right?
Right.
So
Right.
anyways, stuff going on around here. It's summertime and all that stuff, right? I caught a heat wave, man. A little too much fun in the sun earlier, but there is a good aspects of the ego, right, guys? Like the
Yeah.
autonomy of bodily functions that people are clueless about, that are operating 24/7 a lot of times. And just the fact that we're made up of like trillions of cells,
Hmm.
and they're all the time generating and all that stuff. Just thinking about that realization in and of itself, isn't that just like a world of wonder, right?
That's like almost that's almost like a metaphor for us. Like, what if we could learn to work together as one unit like that? And part of it is, okay, getting, at least putting your ego in check, right? When you need to. But at the same time, yes, like you said, your ego is, it's your concept of your interactions in the world, kind of. So, you want to be aware of, where you are in the world, and maybe like what you are to other people, and how you could, best work with them.
Yeah, yeah, and not get caught up in all the ego identification with, oh, like
Right.
I'm this person because I work at this job, so that's
Mm.
like the first thing I'm gonna say when like, oh hey, how's it going? What's your name? What do you do? You're like,
About
I'm
what?
doing me, yo. Like I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a stellar individual. But yeah, there are good sides of the ego when you've really done some good inner work. Is But at the same time, it's just like basic shit. Some of these things, I'm just gonna go down the list real quick, and feel free to comment or add on to it. But yeah, we can identify and defend oneself. Like holy shit, we can like breathe and realize like okay, it's our mouth that we have to put food into to sustain our. You know what I mean? Like it can also provide a good amount of energy. You get that, especially in that self defense mode, right? That hardcore shit too as well. It can also be a driving force to accomplish many things. It's also a learning tool of expression and a lesson of, in general, yeah, so much stuff that we can observe through that ego attachment or identification of certain things. If we're able to draw back and be that observer, right? There's so many lessons we can learn about how we control ourselves and how we can balance things and be in alignment to the divine will. And that's what I gotta say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's like the, spiritual teachings of, you know, when you're meditating, you're supposed to learn to recognize your inner voice, and kind of look at it almost as if from the outside. And I think that's kind of critical to, seeing, seeing what impact we're having in the world, realistically. um
Yeah, there's so much we can do, and honestly, like I love the idea of prospect of being able to participate in building a hermetically sealed society or abol- abolitionist guy.
Abolitionist.
Yeah, and a voluntarist, anarchist, whatever. Right? It's all like the same things, but I want people to understand that are listening that like there's not just people need to get over being hung up on the just like anarchy, anarchists, whatever the fuck. You know how many stupid ass fucking memes are on the internet about this motherfucking bullshit from actual people that are like down with freedom, but are hating on whatever fucking anarchist community. Like holy fucking shit, yo! And even the anarchist community is it's split up into how many
Oh,
like subcategories?
yeah, I
Like
know.
what the
I
fuck? Like can
know.
we get on the same page, people? Like what the fuck is going on, yo?
I know. We really need to find, I think maybe we need to get down to the fundamentals, like, which would be what, like objective morality. I mean, can we at least find a way to agree on that and then work from there? Because, you have like different types of anarchy too, anarcho capitalism, anarcho communism. And it's like, okay, well, look, there might be nice things about all those kind of little factions or whatever, but at the same time, I think you need to understand that, the whole principle is that you can't force everybody to live under one system. So, actually, I was something you said. Um, okay, when you talk about a hermetically sealed society, now there's been this idea that the ideal society would be, this many people, like what is it, 150 people or something for 4 reasons. uh, and as it gets larger and larger, then you end up having more and more problems. There's a book I want to read. I just found out about. It's called The Voluntarist City. So I think it kind of goes into kind of expanding on that. But what do you think? Do you think there is an ideal size for a society, and it would be best if we all kind of just split up into smaller groups, or do you think that we could all come together and work, together in a way? Obviously, I'm not proposing a one world government, since for one, I don't believe in government.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, and real quick, the book you're talking about is that the one you just recently acquired?
oh no, that one was called Anarchy and the Law by Ed Stringham.
Oh,
This one,
right.
I forget the name of the author. Hold on, I can pull that up real quick.
Right. Well,
And a guy has a sorry to interrupt. A guy had a whole YouTube channel where he talks about it. He's got several playlists on it.
oh,
So,
cool.
but
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to put that in the show link.
Oh,
Show
it was
notes.
called Voluntary City. Sorry,
Huh.
the Voluntary City. Yeah.
Nice. So, like, yeah, I'm talking about like, yeah, let's build some stuff. We can definitely do that. We can definitely do the breakaway society, but at the same time, like, a hermetically sealed society can uh, be considered just an archetype, if you will. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden people are gonna move out of their houses and go live in the fucking like people can still live wherever they're at. Yet, yeah, there's
Yeah.
it yes. Based off that, it's why am I putting myself in this hole? But you know what I mean? It's doesn't mean we have to be like in, a community, physically per se. Um, Folks can be living where they're at and being able to like stay the fuck out of the matrix, I guess,
Right.
and just like staying out of the participation of evil and slavery and all this shit.
Yeah, cuz it's more about consciousness, right? It's more about, your what am I trying to say? Your level of consciousness and how you interact with the world versus where you are physically, I mean, obviously there might be different advantages and different and disadvantages, to your physical geographical location, but ultimately it does come down to a change in consciousness. And maybe kind of like how I was talking about different sizes for a society, and if there's an ideal size, well, I think ideally, if everybody were capable of getting to that level of consciousness, then there wouldn't need to be restrictions put on, how large a society could be and still actually be functional. But so maybe that should be kind of almost like our end goal, but we should have this awareness of kind of where we are today and kind of strive for, like, short-term goals and kind of take it like step by step almost. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, I could dig it. And there's so many ways we can apply these things, and not everything is gonna sound appealing for every person, and people can have their own varieties or versions of that and still live by universal principles and natural law and that kind of stuff. And I guess when I was thinking about like the a hermetically sealed society being like an archetype, and like one of the few examples that I could think about is Atlantis before the fall and the corruption and all that stuff, infiltration, if you will. I don't know if they had a money system, monetary, whatever, all these things, but it's just that level of consciousness was extremely high, and for a lot of different reasons, it's not about that in this conversation, but yeah, and there's plenty of folks that have a weird idea of that anyways, so to fuck, I kind of lost my train of thought. Any comments on that shit? Sorry.
Well, uh, so I guess, there are a lot of theories about Atlantis, but I think the fall, the idea about the fall, I mean, there was a priest class who, kind of, I think, you know, we could really just look at our known history and kind of, I don't know, imagine what that might have looked like, because it would have carried over to, from ancient times. There was a priest class. Today there's still a priest class. It's just more covert than it has been, and I guess, maybe for those who maybe that term is a little too vague, I'm talking about like dark occultists who use this knowledge of human psychology and kind of keep that information hidden or occulted. Some people believe occult means supernatural, and it doesn't mean supernatural. whether or not you believe in the supernatural, which even if you do, you wouldn't consider it supernatural. You would consider it an understanding of the natural sciences that, but that's a different topic. But using that occult knowledge of human psychology to give them an edge over everybody else, as Mark Passio would say, a power differential. And I mean, they're still doing it today. And, that's not a theory. That's, it's very obvious and it is provable.
Yeah, totally. From what I learned, it wasn't necessarily a priest class in Atlantis. At least, during the golden era, it was more of a Jedi class, the real Jedi, if you will. But anyways, I brought them up just because, yeah, it's something of grandeur, kind of romanticized a little bit, and to learn lessons from that, of just like even the most golden era of anything can still become infiltrated or fallen, corrupted, whatever the hell happened. So can we not learn from these mistakes? And yeah, keep in mind that hey, like some of these things that we're talking about, like this ain't new. Like we're not trying to reinvent the fucking wheel. It's like this has been done for since millennia times 2030, whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
I saw your cat back there. Cool. Yeah. So what's up with the animals? Are people gonna be picking up their shit after their dogs, in a in an
In an
anarchist
anarchistic
society?
society? No. Obviously not, because the animals would live by no rules too. They'd just shit all over the place wherever they wanted, I mean, it would be total chaos. Yeah. But no, of course we'd still have cat litter in an anarchistic society.
Yeah, right, because everyone has needs. There's a lot of people that want to provide for those needs, and it
Yeah.
keeps everything moving like it has before. So it's like not a whole lot's going to change. It's just going to be like uh, humanity minus fucking tyranny and
Right.
Ubanare shit, right?
Yeah. As okay, so I was talking about the protection agencies. So if I can remember a section of that book I was just reading, but it was talking about how talking about scenarios where it could evolve from an anarchistic society to ultra minimalist government, and then to minimalist government, and then to the state, so where we are now. And this one guy thinks, so this was actually a commentary on, I think it might have been about the book Anarchy, the State, and Utopia. I don't know if you've heard of that, but this was a commentary on this guy's work, you know. But so this guy was, proposing that this is just what would happen, because the protection agencies would, you know, obviously there wouldn't be, like, anybody could form a protection agency, right? And it wouldn't be violating anybody's rights, and people could choose to, patronize one protection agency or another, or not at all. But then he was arguing that, okay, but if a protection agency is going to guarantee to protect you to some extent from, you know, basically mitigate risk, right? So then there would be behaviors that they might deem high risk, that they would try to prevent other people from engaging in. And then eventually you'd have, some protection agencies kind of consolidating, and then you might have skirmishes between protection agencies, and then perhaps becoming monopolies. And then he describes a situation where it almost becomes a tax, because what happens is, in order to, he's saying, okay, so if I am telling you, well, you can't use drugs because this creates a risk to other people around you, then you have to be compensated for that. And so the way I'll compensate you is by giving out vouchers for my services. And so basically, I agree to protect you now because I'm taking away this right from you, right? Well, that starts to sound like the state, right? And then the people that they're giving the vouchers to, since they're now getting the services for free, the people who are subscribing to the services are now going to pay a higher premium. And but the author of this particular commentary, because this book is a collection of essays and commentaries on other works, but he says, okay, but look, here's the deal. Like, when it gets, if it got to that point, then why would the people who were subscribing to that service keep paying those high premiums if they can just go somewhere else? And that's the free market at work. Those are the kinds of problems that would sort themselves out through the free market. So I thought that was really cool because,
Yeah, true free market. Which have we ever seen that in our lifetimes? Like,
yeah,
so sometimes these
the
things, they're hard to imagine, right? And right, because
yeah, I think maybe we
how
see
it's gonna play
little.
out. No,
Oh, sorry, what?
no, you're good.
Well, I think we see little examples of that with personal interactions or whatever. Like, for example, we used to have a peach tree, and I don't know what happened to it, man. All our fruit just died one day. It was kind of sketchy, but anyway, so we would get like bundles of peaches, and I took some to our neighbors because they're real cool, and anytime I needed to borrow a tool or something, man, he's got everything. So I go over there, so I'd give him a couple bags full of peaches. They'd bake us peach cobbler, and I mean, it's just these like free exchanges that, without expecting anything in return, but just through human decency, like you want to do something for somebody because you recognize good in them, you recognize value in them. And people like to throw the whole human nature argument in, and I think for the most part it's bullshit whenever I hear that, because it's always inevitably followed by we're just violent savages by nature. Like, no, we're not. We actually, have good, and we have the potential for good and bad, but we're programmable. It's nature versus nurture. I mean, we might, be more predisposed to lean one way, but that doesn't mean that it's set in stone. We have free will, and now people try to argue that we don't have free will. Okay, well, I like, what Larkin Rose says. Like, well, anytime someone says that, I slap them upside the head. I wasn't in charge of that decision. I don't have free will. It's just ridiculous that
Yeah.
the way people try to explain things away.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was trying not to get too heady or over intellectual with things, but to like deconstruct like certain aspects of society that are like really quite a hindrance, especially even just like person to person relationships. You know, think about all the fucking landlords and all these say Airbnb folks and all this stuff, and like they're charging pretty exorbitant fucking prices, even though sometimes they don't have a choice otherwise. Whatever the fucking case be, you know, like everyone's got to pay their fucking mortgage and whatever the hell and property tax and all this stuff. Imagine if that didn't exist anymore,
Oh
right?
my god, dude, don't get me started on
Yeah.
that.
So,
Or do. I mean,
I mean, that's just like an aspect. So how can we live on like free land without paying like any kind of property tax or that kind of stuff, or being able to, you know, host people in exchange for, you know, goods or services or whatever, right? You know?
yeah. So property, that was something that was kind of a conundrum for me, for quite a while when I was learning about these principles. And I've even pissed some people off actually on uh during the Q&A after a certain conference. I had asked about it because I genuinely wanted to know how would property rights work, under natural law. And somebody got mad and thought I was trolling. And I'm like, no, I'm not trolling. I genuinely want to know so that I can explain this to people, but I've actually, you know, heard several good explanations and read up on it since then. But, the basic idea is okay, look, so what you create is yours, right? So you take a piece of land. One analogy is there's a difference between, you know, uh, finding a little plot of land and building a house on it, with your own two hands or whatever, paying someone to do it and living there, versus finding a large expanse of land and planting a flag on it and saying, I own all this as far as the eye can see. So if you want to do anything with this, then you answer to me. That didn't intentionally rhyme, but I'll go with it. Um, but yeah, if so, even like, for instance, farming, if you're actively producing on that land, then you have a claim to that land. There's a difference between that and just like buying up a bunch of land or even buying up a bunch of houses that you're not, living in, no one's living in. I don't know exactly how, that would work technically as far as like real estate goes, with buildings already on it. But I mean, the general principle, you don't need more than you're actively using. And this has also been applied to, for instance, like a factory, right? Like, it's been said like the workers would technically own the factory because they're the ones working it, right? And I don't know, maybe that sounds too much like communism, but there's there's a lot of ways this could go. But I think, there has to be some reason applied. And also, one thing that got brought up, and it might have been, oh, might have been by James Cordner at the oh, was it the Trivium conference? No. Well, anyway, he had mentioned there's a mechanism in the law where, where you could retroactively, take back land uh, that had been received illegitimately. For instance, if you found out that this large corporation or whatever had killed all these people, and we're now benefiting from it, then all all this land or whatever that they own kind of becomes null and void. Who knows, maybe there would have to be some things like that happen, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that. But you know what, I just want what's right. I And there's obviously a lot of psychopaths out there who are not down with creating a world where there is objective morality.
Yeah, they prefer it to be subjective, to wield it to their favor in our misfortune, right? But yeah. As far as, what these things kind of correlate, and what I'm trying to dispel in regards to how all these things, you know, the contrast of, the world we're living in, and, what we'd like to see more of. And yeah, there needs to be some destruction to rebuild the proper stuff.
Right,
Yet
right.
it doesn't mean people have to, leave their houses, whatever the fuck, right? But as far as, okay, so if anyone's curious, as like, what the hell is a hermetically sealed society and this and that? And no, I'm not talking about anything sealed, like, it's constricted, it has limitations and this and that. Although, depending on one's perspective of what limitations are, and if they want to be defiant in the face of, just the laws of the universe, then go ahead. That's your free will choice, but, you're not gonna like the consequences of that
Yeah.
unalignment. So, collectively, it's going to be very hard. And what you said is pertinent, with a lot of people, as far as baby steps, because these things cannot be bypassed at all, and they really need to be taken into consideration and practice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Talking about the Hermetica. And so it is, all a state of mind, and how we function with ourselves, within ourselves, through and through, thought after thought, and those trains, and what directions are they, going towards, right? All these damn mosquitoes, but don't go in my direction, So the correspondence, the second cosmic law principle, like, how is the communication between people, and, how is that, inner to outer relationship with individuals and the other people that they interact with, so they're not projecting a bunch of bullshit shadow stuff, right? And how can we, really be more unified at a particular frequency or vibration? We see a lot of people in communities talk about, yeah, like everything is energy, quoting the real Nikola Tesla and all this stuff. If you want to think of life and whatever, think about energy, frequency, and whatever. But what frequency are they operating on frequently? Is it a good one, or just, the good old, like, hey, we'll show this, good old meme, and, give it a thumbs up if we see it, and this and that. And that's not to, I'm not trying to, cut down on folks, this and that. Props to those that have actually made memes that inspire folks to, really consider those things, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, real quick, just yeah, like the polarity. Like there's so many different extremes and degrees between so many different things throughout the fabric of society. And if we can really narrow it down to that doesn't make any sense where I was going with, but if folks can really just take all these things into consideration and being able to not be polarized towards other people's opinions as well. I
Mm,
really have this in mind with the whole dissolving the divide podcast that I had with Leslie, and yeah, the whole cause and effect. How are people going to be going through their days with the karma, and like is that something that's in the back of their mind or in the forefront all the time, and what they consider in regards to the energy and expressions and all actions that they put forth out into the reality field, out into the universe, right? As within, so without, right? As above, so below, right? How are they even pre-conceptualizing how that's going to play out in a sense before they even utter the words in an unconscious manner, whatever, right? So like I said that in a manner for folks to yeah, like be more motivated to catch yourselves before the bad action happens, and you have to reap what you sow with that shit, you know. And yeah, with the seventh cosmic law principle of gender, it'd be great for men and women to really just get over a lot of fucking bullshit that's so goddamn fucking trivial and falling into so many divide and conquer tactics that
yeah.
it's beyond pathetic in so many fucking ways. And like people are actually whatever age they are considered adults acting like children. It's a real shame, and we could do so much better. And there's like going back to the fucking bullshit ego stuff. If y'all can put a lot of that shit aside and just try to hear each other out, have a little fucking heart to heart type of interaction conversation, and leave the below the belt bullshit aside, and all the neo feminists and your MGTOW monkeys can chill the fuck out a little bit,
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
to like understand each other more a little, so you know no one's gonna be able to like control any other person. Like we're trying to like speak about these things to inspire other people, right? Kind of like you can lead the horse to the water but can't make him drink, unless you want to force that stuff and again reap what you sow and this and that. It doesn't work with a lot of people, and a lot of folks can get repulsive about those things. But anyways, but yeah, brother, I know you care about these things too, and you got some things to say about that, I'm sure. So yeah, what's good?
Yeah. Well, so one thing is, um, you know, yeah, we, if we're going to, have a functional society under natural law, then it does have to start, it has to start with the right frame of mind. And, we do have to kind of be right on the fundamentals. And yeah, you can't force everybody to think the same way. So a lot of it is just kind of putting it out there and, kind of setting the example and, being the change you want to see, as they say. And, so probably would have to start with, like we're talking about, breakaway societies. And as far as the polarities, one thing I kind of been thinking about recently is just this whole hero and villain paradigm. So, people get caught in this like hero villain worship, and I use worship like for villain too, because to me it's the same. You have people who, for instance, okay, let's look at Trump. I mean, there's Trump derangement syndrome. There's people who hate him so much that they're obsessed with him, you know, and so basically, if we just look at it from like a political standpoint, so you got, the hero and the villain, and the hero and the villain are different depending on what perspective you're looking at it from, right? But what's going to happen when you're looking at someone as the hero is you're going to exaggerate every little good thing, which, since I can't think of anything good about either one of them, I'm just going to say these things are mostly made up or just kind of inferred. But you're going to only be looking at those things, and then anything bad that they've done, you're going to be in denial, or you're going to be explaining it away. And what does that do? What does that do when you're looking at something from that, frame of mind? You're basically not seeing that person for what they really are. And so in turn, you're also not seeing reality for what it really is. And guess what? You're also probably not looking at yourself for who you really are, So that's going to get you fucked up. Like, I mean, I think that's a big problem, and we could apply that to so many things, that polarity, the I mean, politics, religion versus atheism, men and women. Obviously, like, turning the sexes against each other. That's the most effective way to divide civilization, right? Because you're literally cutting civilization in half when you do that. I mean, those are the two largest groups of people in the world. Everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, okay, which we have a problem with that too, but everybody does fall into one of those categories, and then, I don't know. I guess I want to be careful about, the topic, but it seems like, a lot of people are focusing so much on, the outward appearance, and, like, so they feel, they might feel like they don't belong in their body or whatever for whatever reason, but then they're focusing on, okay, well, then I need to get this set of sex organs, and I need to, act this way and dress this way, but you're not actually, you know, a man and a woman is not, how they dress, or what sex organs. I mean, obviously, we do have physical characteristics that we tend to, embody, right? But what about the divine masculine and divine feminine? Like, what about, you know, trying to see like both genders for, you know, the beauty that each has and how they can both work together, But people are so focused on outward appearances, and they don't want to look inward, and they don't want to do the real work, and that could apply to almost anything.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think that, they're trying to create some kind of justification, like with whatever they want to identify, and like, oh, like, I'm not divine masculine nor divine feminine. I'm divine fluidity or whatever. Like, Like,
Yeah.
are you
It's
kidding me?
like,
Like,
there's nothing wrong
whatever.
with that, and I
Yeah.
understand that,
It's not to get into
you
that. Like,
know,
I'm
like,
brush this conversation aside with this topic.
yeah.
Like straight up, I wanted to get back to what you're talking about with Trump. That really kicked off a lot of this stuff, though. By the way, which just amplified the fuck out of the polarization and all this stuff, and people compelled to go ape shit over this stuff. And like when you're talking about the hero and the villain, I really love that you mentioned that, because it's kind of been on my mind. It's been talked about in recent times. Like, yeah, that makes sense, and how the hero can become the villain, or even worse than the villain. And I'm thinking about like some of these folks, stuck on this, Trump syndrome, whatever the hell. And it's like, damn, it's like they became more annoying than him, like like, or whatever,
Yeah.
So, you want to say something, or
Um. hmm.
if not, I just wanted to say, because it falls in line with this whole good and evil stuff. The fact that people believe that there needs to be evil for good to exist, or whatever the fuck. Like, in this realm, I don't know what the fuck people are fucking talking about with that. Because, like, we're all born into this world. Like, we all make mistakes. We all have fucking arguments and all this stuff. So there's always things to learn from that, from just growing, from evolving and all this stuff. It doesn't mean like I don't understand what the fuck people are on. Like, evil is not a natural force in this cosmos as far as I'm fucking concerned. That's not how
Yeah.
creation intended anything to be. Maybe people might equate evil to like the shadow side of the lights of creation.
Yeah.
Yet I feel there's more distortion to that, and just especially here in Earth. Like, things have been so perverted and inverted, and imagine if like we were living in that pure divine, like, essence of, like, we have all function of our brains and whatever, like, well, we're still going to be growing up as a baby and all that stuff, and there's still like things to learn from and experience to gain and all that stuff. So you know what I mean, there's going to be relationships, and there's going to be arguments, and complications sometimes, and whatever the fuck, that's just part of fucking life. It doesn't mean that evil has to exist for any good to be justified, or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, yeah, it's just
Huh.
a weird thing that I see. So if people can really break some of these spells, but also they can recognize that there is that psychopath that can be within us, rather, like, the whole owning the psychopath, doing the real shadow work, and like recognizing and realizing that, like, we could have the potential to be the ultimate evil, yet our free will and that heart-based intelligence that's connected to source, as it should always and forever be, because we're eternal spirits, souls, like, that light side of us would not succumb to that bullshit temptation, or whatever the fuck, right? I
Yeah.
think of Gandalf trying to like accept the ring,
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. Anyways,
Yeah. And if someone wants to argue, well, you know, we need creative and destructive forces. Okay. I mean, to some extent, that's true. But at the same time, we would not, we're, okay. So us as humans right now, we're almost like the stewards of this world, right? We have more power to influence this world than any other living being that we're aware of. whether or not you want to, you know, believe in a higher power, which I think there's true to, you know, a higher consciousness or whatever. But we wouldn't be here if we were just destructive. If we were the, you know, violent savages that some people portray us as, then we wouldn't have made it, you know. For one thing, we have to be able to nurture our young, you know, and we've benefited from forming family units. We've benefited from forming tribes, you know. We've been able to accomplish, you know, arguably great things, or at least things that have potential to be great if they're used for the right purposes, through large collaborations of many, many, many people together, you know, working toward one goal, you know. So we wouldn't we wouldn't have any of that if we thought, well, it doesn't matter, you know, we're just destructive, or we can be both, you know. What we should have the potential to be destructive if it's necessary, but, you know, is it ever necessary if we're not, you know, reacting towards, you know, an outside threat? I mean, it's just,
Yeah, it's complicated, and yeah, didn't it's so easy to fall into all these, side discussions of things that revolve around, so many aspects. I mean, like it's just life. How can we just live a life that is going to be secure, sustainable, and without any kind of form of restraints? Like fuck, like they got regulations to have cars, beep at us just, if we don't have our seatbelt on and all this stuff. Like we're being coddled into fucking
oh,
weird forms of fucking slavery and that kind of shit. You know what I
oh,
mean? So it's like we're getting treated like children. There's a
yeah,
good amount of occult mockery and satanic rituals happening on the world stage and through false flags and all this stuff and yada yada. And here we go again, getting off topic of just finding solutions towards how do we do away with all that? I mean, see, that's the thing. Like, can we even have and establish something with all that shit still going on, right? So that's
yeah,
what going back to what he's saying. Like, yeah, as human, we can build and destroy, and yeah, like sometimes, like as far as alchemical terms are concerned, like there is a lot of destruction with all that as far as the calcination process of burning all the falsities and all this stuff. So burning up all the falsities and falsehoods that exist on this earth are fucking necessary for us to go through the proper alchemical collective transformation to actually create that fucking uh, foundation on that fertile soil that's been burnt the fuck to a crisp uh, you know from all the falsities and lies and deceit and even the fucking archons and all that shit, right? So we can separate from that and then continue towards the coagulation of what the fuck is proper in a hermetically sealed nation, whatever.
yeah. And when you brought up, you know, like our cars beeping at us to put our seatbelts on, so you reminded me of. So my car has one of those backup cameras, right? And I knew this was going to happen, and I tried, you know, to not be completely reliant on it, right? Like even if I could just easily just look at that screen and back up, I would still make it a habit to look over my shoulder and stuff. Well, guess what? The damn thing stopped working, and now I'm I literally have anxiety now every time I back up because it just doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm not getting enough information, you know, in order to really be aware of my surroundings. And it's, man, this shit is like crippling us. It's making us forget how to think, and that's another thing, is that if we want to create a better society, we have to actually kind of take some responsibility, and be willing to, do what's required. And I mean, I think, a lot of people would rather just, live under the, I don't know, I want to say like false sense of security that government provides, and not have to really think about things, because everything's taken care of. And all I have to do is just like fill in a little circle on a fucking voting ballot, and my representative will do everything for me, do all the thinking for me. And look, I'm not saying that each one of us has to like become a fucking expert in every field of study and know how to fucking build a car from the ground up and create complex, systems, whatever. I'm not saying that, I mean, everybody, has, something. For one thing, everybody has kind of their role in the world today, something they've learned to do, or something, that they're good at, whatever, but the thing is, we need to kind of stop. The more we take the easy way, you know, the more freedom we're giving up, basically.
Yeah, the path of severity.
Mm.
And that's not in the right rhythm, which that's one of the principles I forgot to mention. And yeah, like for us to be in a proper rhythm and being in the flow of, yeah, just nature, as my friend Jim Adams likes to say a lot. But yeah, I think a lot of people are not ready for this at all. I think
Yeah.
they're still stuck in a comfort zone, in a comfort slash survival mode zone. Everyone has their house, their
Right.
comfort zone in that. Yet, outside of that, it's like, oh, the hustle and bustle, the rat race, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Like you just listed another example of polarities, right? As long as they can keep us polarized, we're going from that comfort to that survival mode. And as long as we're not like really experiencing too much of the real world in between, then they got us, man.
Yeah, and it seems almost like a ball and chain with, like, well, to keep our comfort, we have to keep, on the hamster wheel to keep making that income, to keep paying someone else's mortgage if you're paying rent for something, or if you're, paying interest, or paying the mortgage if you own a house, that kind of stuff, or whatever, paying your own mortgage. And yeah, it's one thing to engage in death, it's another to find ways to maneuver through this Black's Law Admiralty Law.
Oh, maritime admiralty law. That's an interesting
Yeah,
topic.
folks are really checking out David Greenberg. He's got some really interesting stuff.
And I saw his interview with Brandon Joe Williams, and I've been kind of, I actually been following Brandon for a few years now, but I never went through the steps, with the state national movement, because I kind of, I was curious about it, and I think there's something to it, but I also think there's so many different interpretations for the law. And oh, for instance, okay, I'm sure you probably heard of Crow 777, right? Okay, so and he's interviewed many people who study that field. And he's got a whole law playlist. I went through that whole thing, and there's so many different interpretations even there. And like Crow has pointed out, they all seem to have some truth to them, and all these people seem to have had little successes with their methods. Um, One thing about the whole state national thing is it just seems like if you're obviously anybody who's looked into it knows that the term sovereign citizen is actually a misnomer. It's an oxymoron. You can't be a sovereign and a citizen, and that term is used by the quote unquote authorities a lot in order to misdirect people, you know. But
Even
one
in
thing,
some controlled opposition type of thing, you mean, or what?
I think there's a lot of that going on too, because you can get in some serious trouble if you do things wrong. But a big thing to me that doesn't make sense about it is if you're a sovereign, if you are truly sovereign, you don't need to jump through hoops and fill out all this paperwork like just right, and then cite all these codes from the UCC, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. Okay, that's for commerce. If you're sovereign and you're a human being, those codes don't apply to you. And I've looked into like the work of Clint Richardson, and he really tears a lot of that. Are you familiar with him at all? He really tears a lot of that shit down. Like, I mean, just and he calls it the whole like patriot mythology. And I mean, he's got several like 8-hour videos on it where he, you know, I think last I heard, he's saying like, private membership associations are kind of the way to go, and that's something I've been meaning to look into more. But yeah, I think there is some to the whole thing, but at the end of the day, it's still just putting down on paper what we should already know. It's I mean, common law is the same thing. It's putting down on paper what we should already know, and it's
Yeah, although I don't even think people understand common law, and a lot of people that even understand common law misappropriate that with natural law, which is.
yeah, yeah. I
But
mean,
anyway, like,
that's true. And there's also different interpretations for what exactly common law is. But
yeah, I mean, I've talked to politicians about that, and still, like, they're, like, trying to get votes in campaign or whatever, and like, so they're part of the dilemma of what is it, the most dangerous superstition, book by Larkin Rose, right? Of
yeah,
the false idea of authority, of the false.
yeah, like you're not gonna, the very act of voting is it supports violence. I say it is violence. Maybe it's not direct violence, but if you follow it through to conclusion, you know what is voting. It's majority rule, right? And how is any legislation passed by this politician that a little over half of the population might agree with or whatever? How is it going to be passed? How is it going to be enforced? Ultimately through violence and coercion. So I mean, you're enabling violence and coercion by participating in that system. And if you look at like libertarianism, I mean, so I understand a lot of libertarians don't even vote, and that seems kind of funny, but it also makes sense, right? Because it seems like they actually do understand what those ideals do stand for.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like I don't mind some of the ideals of libertarians because it at least opens up the mind of those stuck in the dualistic paradigm of just Republican Democrat.
Yeah.
Yet it still falls short to a good degree. Yet what I wanted to ask you, and like to get more specific into like what does a free society looks like, and if people have in like going back to your question because I never answered it as far as like numbers, like how many people per society. I mean, when we get into that, it just like it puts this kind of control over things, and that's kind of against the whole idea of sovereignty. But anyways, uh
Yeah.
numbers aside, and that's kind of why I kind of thought about Atlantis, because it seemed like it was a pretty big population, and it seemed to be thriving, full of abundance and all that. But as far as a real life example, right, there's ideas being thrown around and people want to weigh in their opinions about it, especially if there's like friction between two different ideas, or like not everyone's on the same page with something, as far as like do we build like new roads or whatever kind of building infrastructure at this site, or do we do it like this, or do we make it with these materials and this and that? So there's all these things to consider, and so that's why there are like little committees or whatever, people to kind of come together, do a roundtable, and organize exactly what is the best option. Yet there's gonna come plenty of times, this is just part of life of disagreements and all these things and things to consider. So yeah, are the options, do people vote, do people do like, aside from voting, what other options are best to consider when facing these conundrums, I guess is my question.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned voting, and that's actually not completely out of the question. One idea that has been implemented before is, oh, I don't remember the terminology, but essentially there would be a vote, and if everybody agreed on it, then they move forward with the idea. If even one person disagreed, then okay, well then let's think of something else. Okay. And obviously if you're playing devil's advocate, you could say, "Oh, well, what about that one guy that's just trying to be difficult and ruin it for everybody?" I mean, I don't uh, off the top of my head, okay, I don't have the ideal solution to that, but at the same time, if you're in a voluntary society, you know, nobody's forcing you to be there. And if you're just there to cause trouble, obviously we don't want to see, this is a whole different thing than when people say, "Oh, well, if you don't like this country or whatever, then leave," whatever. That's a completely different thing, I mean, for one thing, who said that there is only one voluntary society? I guess we're talking about like what would be an ideal size or whatever, but really it could be any size, and it could be any number of different societies. But if you're choosing to participate in a group, that's kind of assume that you want the group to succeed, right? I mean, but I guess that's just, one way, is voting. And yeah, as far as decision making, I mean, obviously, if somebody is, trained in certain fields, then you're going to kind of look to their expertise to solve certain problems, right? And, at least consult them. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to consider, and it's not like some of the things that people are involved with and that are in place, they're not the worst. I think it's just, we're under a good amount of false overlays of, we got the government control systems, we got the financial stuff, and all that stuff that, trickles down from that. Think of, insurance and things of that nature, tax, and yeah,
Hmm.
like paying whatever. I mean, insurance is like a multitude of different things sometimes, and forget what else, but
Well, you mentioned tax, and that was something I actually wanted to speak on earlier because, okay, a lot of people think, you know, for one thing, the concept of roads, right? Well, who would pay for them, right? Well, it's commonly thought that, one solution would be to have essentially toll roads or whatever. And then people make the argument, well, I don't want to have to pay every time, I drive on a road. Okay, well, imagine this. So imagine, we could look at, for one, let's start with all the different forms of taxes, right? So you got property tax, you got sales tax, you got, let's see, wheel tax, registration for your car. Man, what are some others? But okay, look, we have so many. Death tax. Oh, so now you have to pay to die too. What, like inheritance tax? There's so many different forms of taxes, right? Now let's look at the lifespan of a product, for instance. So you buy a product, say, I don't know. Let's say you buy like I don't know, a table saw or whatever. Let's just, so you buy that with money that you got payroll tax, okay? And then did I say income tax already? But you're buying it with money that you've already been taxed on. And then you're paying sales tax on top of that. Okay? And how much does this item cost? How much of that cost that you're paying is actually due to the taxes that company is paying? Not only they're paying taxes on the materials they made it with, they're paying taxes on the money they pay their workers, because they have to pay taxes on that too, not just you who get taxed on the money you earn. The employer actually has to pay taxes on that too. Okay, they're paying taxes on the property used, to manufacture that product. I mean, dude, by the time we touch anything, it's been taxed so much. Like, do you realize how much of our, you know, you may say, well, I'm paying 35% in tax, because that's what my income tax is. No, dude, like, you're paying so much more than you realize in tax. Like, somebody actually did the figures, and I think it came out to like 90%. So imagine if you were making 10 times as much money as you are now. Would you have a problem paying for a fucking toll road? Because I wouldn't. Would you have a problem paying for insurance? Like, I could do so much with 10 times the income I have right now. I don't think, I think we can kind of see what the problem is here. I mean,
Yeah. Death and taxes is a real thing. And yeah, like the whole road thing, there's so many different examples and things of the nature of the human spirit that is just looking to help out any kind of situation, any need. And that goes beyond the need of government. It's always superseded that. And when there's a will, there's a fucking way. And
yeah.
as far as, like the roads, and like people, even like Larkin Rose, he had I wouldn't even call it a debate because I think it was just a one-on-one discussion, but a guy named Adam Kokesh, and he was like trying to run for president or something like that
Hmm.
in the libertarian camp a couple years ago,
Okay.
whatever. I don't know if you know that guy.
Uh,
Yeah,
not
he
sure.
he wrote a book called Freedom, and he brought up the roads, and he brought up a decent example, and yeah, it made me think, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and kind of paraphrasing what he said, but I'm just, I don't even know if it was him, but it was just, that shit inspired me to think of just, well, like, and I was thinking about this, just like the the quality is fucking shite sometimes. The government funded bullshit roads. Oh
Oh yeah.
wow, it's fucking
Oh
horrendous.
yeah.
So imagine, the community and other people, you know, think about like a GoFundMe even. There's all these different things to consider to pay,
Yeah.
the service workers to construct roads, or even if the roads are already fucking built, the roads exist already. Like people need to get the
Right.
fuck over this goddamn fucking stupid ass argument, you know. And especially in France, they have roads that have been, built for a long time, and sorry, they have pay tolls to it. Yet, as far as a lot of people are concerned, and what I've learned, that's just been paid for over and over, like for a long ass time. Yet, the prices actually go the fuck up.
Hmm.
They're it's like racketeering type of shit,
Yeah.
with
Oh,
that
they have a
opinion steering bullshit, like wrong direction.
racketeering, rack and pinion. Yeah.
But anyway,
Racketeering steering. I like that. Oh, they have a stadium they built in my town, and I mean, it's supposed to generate all this wealth for the city, right? And I mean, we've had a lot of big names come to the stadium now because we finally have one. And of course, they added a stadium tax onto the sales tax. It's like 2% or something. And this was, man, I don't even know if it's been like 10 years or something, but we're still paying that shit. That shit never went away. They don't take taxes away when, you know, they've been getting away with it. They're not. Why are they going to take it away, even if it's already been paid for? You know damn well it's been paid for by now. Freaking man.
And that's like a sport that gets like subsidies already, and they make billions or whatever the fuck. Like they really need that shit from anyone. Like,
Oh,
bro,
it's
holy shit,
ridiculous.
we're paying for bread and circus out the ass and through the nose with that shit.
Yeah.
What the
Like,
fuck? But anyways, what I wanted to mention back with the roads, of just like
oh yeah.
there's a lot of people that have a lot of skill, and sometimes the government they go for like the cheapest of the cheap, that stuff, and like this
Yeah.
is what we get. And I was kind of like, I was back in California, kind of like joking around with my dad and some other folks because I like to bring these things up. It's like a decent segue topic of a conversation of like and anyone is gonna agree with this. Like, do you see these fucking potholes? And do you see the like shit work that they've done to just do whatever to cover it up, or they take their sweet ass time just to cover it? Imagine, like as soon as there's a pothole in a community full of conscious human beings, they're gonna fucking fix that shit sooner than goddamn fucking later. It's not a matter of fucking money. It's a matter of what's doing what's fucking right.
Yeah.
People are so goddamn fucking money driven. It's a poison on society, and that's not what a hermetically sealed society is going
Yeah.
to be fucking based
Like
off of.
we've gotten to the point where why should I do anything for anyone? What's in it for me? What am I going to get paid for it? If that's like how we're thinking, then we're kind of backwards already. So,
Right? Yeah. So
you know,
shit fires me up sometimes. Like
no,
shit.
I hear you. And
But it's
where is
tough the rack and pinion steering rather because you got these potholes and you run over the. Like what the fuck. Anyway.
yeah,
It all comes full circle. Double meaning is depending on how the wheels spin. Just kidding.
yeah.
I'm not trying to be all cute and shit like that. Sorry, but dude, we're hitting 2 hours and it's like
Oh
way
wow.
past
Okay.
some time of hours of the weeness of the wee hours of burning the candle at both ends or whatever.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Yeah, it's actually past my normal bedtime too.
It's a different way
Anyway.
to say it in French, and like "mais oui, mon ami" kind of thing. Like,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
damn, but yeah, like, not to cut it off right this second. I just wanted to say like, hey, like, let's wind it down. Last like 5 minutes
Yeah.
type of stuff. So like, yeah, any final concluding thoughts? Let you
Yeah.
have it. Let folks know what you've been up to as far as like your works on your channel and what do you have planned as far as upcoming projects and that kind of stuff, and just like in real life. Because yeah, we were talking earlier about like, yeah, like doing the great work or whatever, like truth seeking speaking, we also speak through our actions. We speak through them on a daily basis. And that's why I like to call it like a daily operation. So whether you're making videos or not, it's not necessarily about that. What matters the most is whether you're aligned and not being compliant to the draconian bullshit, right?
Right. Right. And I mean, man. So I still do things like register my car and everything because it makes life easier. I don't want someone trying to throw me in a cage, right? I
Yeah,
think
it's
I
like
can.
that thing, like real quick, like it's not the type of hill you're willing to die on, because
Exactly.
you have
Yeah, we
folks
all
that
have to.
they rely on you, kind of thing.
We have to. We really do have to pick our battles, and I think I can probably do more for my family, and try to, reach more people out in the world on the outside than being locked up over some petty shit. So, you know, man, but as far as what I have planned, I want to get back to working on the second part of my little docu series that I was doing. So the first part kind of dealt with the the deities that, like, throughout history, kind of in different religions and teachings, that it may have either influenced the, I guess, archetype of Satan, or kind of relate to that in some way. Because if you look at, there are many parallels between, you see the same, bless you, you see the same figures turning up in many different religions and mythologies, just with different names, right? And I wanted to kind of look at, okay, what is this archetype, and what does it mean to certain people, and how what are the similarities, what are the contrasts, and then I kind of tie it to astrotheology, because most of those deities have, stemmed from astrotheology. So I'm kind of starting with kind of where it starts in the mind, right? But then in the next one, I want to kind of go back as far as I can through recorded history to look at some of the ancient cults. Like, I'm sure you're familiar with Michael Tsarian's work. Man, he's amazing. He's one of my favorites. And so he talks about the lunar, the stellar, and the solar cults. And I want to look at the different cults that fall into those categories, and, kind of do some little segments on as many of those as I can find. And man, the research is very taxing, because if you're just going through what's available to the general public on the web, a lot of shit's been censored. A lot of shit's just not available, or you really have to dig. So it's time consuming. But I said I was gonna do part two. So I still am gonna get back to that. I don't say any kind of time frame or anything, but that's kind of the next thing on my radar. And I don't know, probably, here and there have some awesome talks with cool people like you and me are doing right now. So
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. And yeah, sorry, I'm not in the. It's been a long day, but
I know how it is, man. Yeah.
these things have been, on my mind for a long time. So it's, you know,
How long have you been kind of doing this kind of stuff?
what exactly?
Oh, as far as kind of streaming, and just trying to get the message out.
Uh, Streaming. I mean, this is more since like the dawning of the Rona. Like, ain't nobody been like zooming for. Well, that's not true. Uh, I've been making videos since 2012, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, mostly like conscious hip hop mixes, truth infused.
Yeah, yeah. What was the name of your other channel?
Awaken Your Mind.
Is that the one where? Okay, I thought you had another one before your current one, where it just focused on the music, or is it? Am I thinking of something else?
I got Dissolve in the Divide. Cool.
Oh,
Or
okay. Awaken Your Mind is where you have all your hip hop mixes too. Okay. All right. For some reason, I was thinking you had those on another channel. Okay.
oh yeah, I'm on a lot of different platforms, but yeah, I didn't. I decided not to have this channel exclusive to music because people need to hear this shit. You know,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
music is kind of like done. Like, yo, like I love that stuff. I'm not saying it's done. I'm just saying like music is not going to get it done as far as getting to the point of the conclusion of what we're trying to get towards as far as everyone's actions, ours included, of course, and we're just trying to influence that positive change,
Yeah.
and music could be a great rhythm to move towards that for sure.
Yeah.
Yet some words need to be spoken more directly and taken more seriously, right? Even though people take, lyrics a lot very seriously, but
Yeah. Well, and I agree that we do need. I think we need both. And for me, like one thing I've noticed, because I used to be like really, really just into music. Like that was my thing. You know, I wanted to make music. You know, I recorded some songs like years and years ago and stuff, but it's kind of been I've been losing my love for music, and it's not because I don't still love music, but it's just knowing like the dark side of the entertainment industry and not really wanting to be part of that. But then at the same time, I love it how when there's people like you who are, creating music that is coming from, a different perspective. And, it's what I've kind of wanted. Like, what? Oh, I'm trying to remember his name. Yeah, I'm tired too. Shit. Like, uh, he was on the last, the Seed 5 conference, and he did, it's kind of like reggae style something. They played like several of his songs, but I thought that was so cool, and I'm just,
presence.
yes, presence.
Yeah.
I'm just always
My
like,
buddy Theo Lukes, real quick, he featured him in this website we have. It's called nattylaw.com. And like featured a lot of hip hop artists that are more or less divine aligned to that natural law, natty law, if
yeah.
you will, a little slang thing.
See, yeah, we need more of that, we need to, along with society, man, we need to rebuild the music industry too, and probably Hollywood, most definitely Hollywood.
Yeah.
Shit.
Or maybe
So,
not call it an industry anymore. Something like
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
It's because it shouldn't be about that. You're right.
Yeah, yeah. But I feel you, brother. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, once again, your YouTube channel, Wake of
Oh, it's
Truth, and
it's called Wake of Truth. Yep.
where folks can find you
Yep. I'm
elsewhere.
I'm on YouTube. I think I did create an Odyssey and Rumble channel too, though I haven't uploaded all my videos yet. I want to eventually. I just, procrastinating, I guess. So, but yeah, you can find all of them on YouTube. I haven't been censored yet, although they did try to mess with my Google account, so I couldn't even get into it for a while, but luckily that got resolved.
Oh, yeah. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
Bittersweet in a sense, but yeah, like
Yeah,
it's like, damn, we just want to be honest people, yo. What the hell?
I know. Why are you making it so hard, man?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, Tony, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Yeah.
your efforts, your presence, and intentions with what you got going on in your life and your path work, and trying to do right for your family and a whole lot of other people, and trying to spread the word by other means with YouTube or any other video platform and all that stuff, outside of anything else you got going on. So that's what's up, man. So yeah, we just gotta keep living as a proper example,
Yep.
just
Yep.
like live this, reality into existence, or concept, if you will.
Right. It all starts with thought. Yep.
Yeah. So hopefully folks have a good amount to think about. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much, man. This has been awesome, and it's been awesome to
Yeah.
meet you finally. So
Yeah, likewise.
yeah.
So, yeah, totally. We'll be in touch soon, yo.
All right, man.
Take care out
Take
there.
care.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. Ciao.
So yo, peace, love, and unity. This one's for community. Why? Say this one's for community. Say this one's for community. Say this one's for community. From you to me, there's unity. Say this one's for community. Say this one's for community. Say this one's for community. From you to me. Now, what do I mean when I use the word? What do I mean when I talk about? Yo, there's a lot of different ways that people give praise. A short phrase or a $2 raise for your days. But I don't mean this type of interaction, the kind where you get no satisfaction. There's a whole nother world out there. We gotta learn to share. It's not hard to understand. What's my land is your land. Together forever on this earth we both stand. Cause one without the other is me without my brother. You without your sister, a miss without a mister. I think you get the picture. Damn, I really wish you would open up to me, and we'll see that together me